Reva's devastating revelation to Obi-Wan of Vader's identity forced him to reach out through the Force. His panic opened almost like a conduit through the Force, one closed off for the last decade. But what was on the other side was strong and unmistakable. The conduit carried to Vader's end a barreling swell of flame. Reaching Vader, the swell exploded, manifesting itself as painful memories of his fateful duel with Obi-Wan on Mustafar, the site of his immolation. Until now, Vader was unsure if Obi-Wan had survived this long. He had not felt rage like this in a long time. Obi-Wan was responsible for the pain of every waking second, responsible for Padme's betrayal, responsible for turning him into the dark monster he had become. Obi-Wan destroyed his life. Now he had a chance to destroy Obi-Wan's. But his chance for revenge was just outside of his grasp. His exact location was undetermined. The cloud of rage within him heightened his focus, but narrowed his vision. Kenobi is all that matters now, was understood by every fiber of his being. Vader conveyed to Reva very clearly that Kenobi would be his, and she could earn his favor by bringing him to the Dark Lord. His black helmet was perfect for hiding his emotions and his suspicions of Reva. Her quick ascension in power, despite the other Inquisitors' disdain for her, was no mere coincidence to him, especially given the Grand Inquisitor was critically injured but not dead. Reva proved herself useful, though, tracking Obi-Wan and Senator Organa's daughter to Mapuzo. They were found at a routine checkpoint, and Vader knew they would have no choice but to hide in the nearby village. This was good for Vader. The villagers would be powerless against his might. Vader knew the weaknesses of the Jedi. Their compassion was almost involuntary. The path through the village laid out before him by the Inquisitors was steeping with fear. He could feel it. Vader felt Kenobi too, but it was too faint to reveal exactly where he was, like a snake using infrared vision to hunt mice, but slightly obscured. The atrocities he inflicted were nothing but a few additions to a long list Vader had already accumulated. Nothing would get in the way of Kenobi. Vader's rage was like a searchlight of the dark side. Ready to murder at will, the Force snapped his attention in Kenobi's direction. Vader had found him. But unlike his former Jedi Master, Kenobi was running? Vader was surprised by this and backed off his aggression. He didn't want this to be easy. He wanted to savor it. Preying on Obi-Wan's fear, Vader saw a shell of the man once a great and powerful Jedi Master. Vader knew that no amount of pain he subjected Obi-Wan to would ease his own, but he would juice Obi-Wan of every single drop. Vader let him know, "Your pain has just begun." Vader, dragging Obi-Wan through the fire, reveled in the pain of his former master, a taste of what he experienced on the slopes of Mustafar. He instructed his stormtroopers to retrieve the weak remnant of Obi-Wan Kenobi, but was surprised by the blaster fire that defended him. The fire reignited and brought Vader's painful memories even closer to the surface than before, and caused him to hesitate pursuing Kenobi. But Vader knew that if he was patient, he would have another chance at Kenobi. Vader was never really supportive of the Inquisitors, and we see Vader express this in the series. They were not true Sith, nor appreciators of the Sith arts. The Inquisitors were a group of ex-Jedi dark side devotees. The Emperor used them to not only assist Vader in hunting down the Jedi, but almost as a replacement candidate pool. They were there to keep Vader on his toes. Above all else, the Inquisitors desired power, Reva more so than most. Vader cautiously allowed her to rise to the title of Grand Inquisitor unabated. She was once a Padawan he recognized from his Night of Terrors. Reva allowing Kenobi to rescue Senator Organa's daughter was enough of a failure for Vader to kill her, but he had misjudged her intuition. Vader decided to name Reva Grand Inquisitor in order for her to reveal her true intentions. If she was going to attempt to assassinate him as he suspected, she would have her opportunity shortly. Approaching Jabim, Vader reflected on the lessons of his former master. It appears in these moments almost as if he's letting his guard down slightly, as if he's getting lost in the memories. But once he snaps out of it, his focus narrows again. The rage directed Vader to concentrate his energy in a single direction: Kenobi. His relentlessness allowed him to ground the escaping transport and tear off the walls like paper. but he was fooled. Vader's vision so narrowed, so focused on Kenobi, that he spent his energy on the decoy ship. Just as he released his focus, though, it was redirected, concentrated again at a disturbance in the Force. Reva finally revealed her true intentions as he expected, but he was not impressed. Again, it was all too easy. He split the lightsaber and tossed it to a beaten-down Reva, just to let her know that she wasn't even a worthy opponent. Still, there was no challenge. Vader discarded Reva, likely without much thought. You'd think if he remembered how he killed her the first time, he wouldn't repeat the same move. Her face was familiar to him, but the manner in which he attacked her as a Padawan, he likely didn't remember. By this point, Vader had killed hundreds of people. It was too much detail to remember. Too much detail than his victims deserved. Vader would have Kenobi at any cost, including letting the path and those on it slip through his fingers. He knew the Grand Inquisitor did not agree with his decision, but he did not care. Kenobi was just out of reach, but not for long. He'd face Kenobi alone. Landing on the rocky moon surface, Vader wasted no time on formalities. Kenobi would die, here and now. Obi-Wan was more of a challenge this time around, though. Perhaps he rediscovered some of his confidence. Once again, though, the dark side of the Force proved to be too powerful for Obi-Wan. He could not defend himself. The hate flowing through Vader cracked the ground underneath Kenobi, forming a pit that Kenobi fell into. It was over for Obi-Wan. He had the high ground. Surely this was ironic for Vader. He buried Obi-Wan where he stood, not killing him, but letting him suffer, to die as Anakin did. But his overconfidence was his weakness. He had underestimated the light side, as all dark side users had, though. Kenobi's disturbance in the Force caught him just in the nick of time to mount something of a defense. This Obi-Wan was different from the one he thought he buried for good. He was confident and precise with his technique. Vader began to stumble. Once Obi-Wan mashed Vader's center console, the panic began to set in. He'd finally met his match, but he was not prepared. Vader's panic began to turn into desperation, his focus lifting, desperately swinging for Kenobi, but Kenobi had the upper hand. Obi-Wan struck. Vader was surprised to be alive at this point, although he wasn't sure he would be for much longer. Vader had gone down, but what stood up was a different man. For the first time in a decade, he saw his master and brother without the red hue of his heads-up display. It was just Obi-Wan. The stillness of it grounded him, and a long-gone but familiar sensation rushed over him. Anakin approached the surface and rivaled the Vader in him. It was a constant, labored internal struggle between the suppressed Anakin and the dominant Vader, each trying to surface over the other. The Anakin Obi-Wan knew, though, was gone. His life gone. What stood before Obi-Wan was all that remained of his friend, a lost, disgraced man. But he knew he ultimately was responsible for his daily, relentless pain. In this moment, we see Vader acknowledge that what Obi-Wan did to him was just the consequences of his choices. He did not kill Anakin. Vader did. The darkness resurfaced. To his surprise, Obi-Wan left him there, as is. He had shown mercy in defeat. Vader raged out at his former master, calling for Obi-Wan to fight him, but perhaps more subtly, to put him out of his misery. He secretly, desperately wanted the pain to end, and was angry at Obi-Wan for once again showing him the mercy that he believed he did not deserve. Vader's obsession with Obi-Wan never relaxed. It was incessant in his mind. He would find him again, he reported to his master. But Vader was surprised when Sidious questioned his judgment, though. Surely Vader could not go against his current master. Despite Vader being feared throughout the galaxy, Vader only feared one being, Emperor Palpatine. The calm threat from Sidious snapped his attention back to the Emperor's matters. He had to table his pursuit of Kenobi to protect himself, though secretly, he still wanted to. Vader dared not incur the Emperor's wrath. He obeyed. He'd focus on other matters, but Kenobi was still occupying a recessed space in his mind. He knew that Kenobi was still out there, and while Vader believed it was a long shot, he felt that if he was patient enough, Kenobi would reveal himself again. And when that moment would arrive, he would have his revenge. So that's going to do it here for today's video, guys. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this one. If you did, please leave a like and comment, as it helps the channel out tremendously. Stay tuned for more lore and recap videos, and other than that, have a great rest of your day, and may the Force be with you.